we are talking about things that display through visuals certain amount of information, right? Now let's come to the next part of the question. Do you think we see them or do we read them?
Ma'am, I think if you don't have the knowledge or caliber to to understand the diagrams and illustrations, for example, if you don't have any idea how to decipher them, then we will simply see them. But if you do have the caliber to understand the minute points that are shown in the diagrams and illustrations, then we can read them.
Very good.
This is just my opinions.
Yes, very good answer. And what is your name?
Ma'am, Nihal. Good afternoon, ma'am. Sorry. Yeah.
Very good answer. Very well put together. So this is the point that I was trying to arrive at. Let me first just generally tell you what are diagrams and illustrations, and then I will tell you why do we just see them and why should we rather read them, and why is that act of reading an important part of this whole academic writing process, or even academic reading and learning process, right? Now, when we speak about diagrams and illustrations, and here I am repeating myself, this is any visual, anything that can have a visual impact. It could be maps, it could be charts, it could be graphs, it could be tables, it could be photographs, images, and what else? What else can we think of? Cartoons. Today, you know that cartoons have become a very important part of any sort of analysis, any kind of analysis, especially in literature or fashion, and also interior decoration. Such images have very forceful message to give, right? So these are diagrams and illustrations. Now, my second point, why do you think we end up seeing them or not reading them? Let me answer that part of the question here. You see, as readers, writers, scholars, teachers, we happen to explore, acquire, and adapt to information from umpteen resources, right? So we read articles, theses, NTCC projects, you write them, we read them, books, newspapers, in and out of in our everyday lives. Now, more than once, when we are reading or we are on reading or writing sprees, you must have noticed we come across so many images, so many kinds of diagrams and illustrations that we either would get motivated to read further or we completely ignore. Now, Nihal has already answered that question, that why do we ignore such parts in a write-up? We ignore such parts because we do not know how to read them, either this, or probably we consider them as insignificant to our understanding of a concept. Now, when we are studying something as important as academic writing, it's very important to understand that all sorts of diagrams and illustrations are not only important to draw, to include in your research papers or in your reports, but it is as important to learn to study them, right? Which means to comprehend them, so that whenever you come across any piece of information, you can ingratiate yourself by taking everything in it, rather than discarding what you do not understand. And that is the quality, taking in everything that is written on a page. That is the quality of a good reader and therefore a good researcher, right? Now, after this question, I'll move on to the second, to the table of contents, the things that I really want to discuss today. So this is a list of contents, basically the things that we are going to discuss. First is tables, second charts, graphs, and photographs. How they are included in a text, whether they should or should not be included in a text, where can they be included, where there is a need to discard them, all those things that are required to learn if you want to be a researcher, both. And when you are a researcher, you are both a reader and a writer, right? So moving on, this is a little quote by Edward R. Tufte, which I really liked. It speaks about all these figures that we usually include in reports or in any sort of academic writing. It says graphic excellence is that which gives to the viewer the greatest number of ideas in the shortest time with the least ink in the smallest place. So when we speak about graphic representation, whether it is in the form of maps, tables, graphs, charts, or even photographs, you are in a way ingratiating a reader with a lot of information, with little use of space, with little use of ink. And though graphic representations can come out, they can prove to be a little expensive as far as publishing content is concerned. It is going to make your paper par excellence if done with all sincerity and seriousness, right? This is just a general slide I created on the significance of diagrams, though more or less I have discussed the significance of these visual, figures, but I will still go on to speak on how they help you to increase the impact of your research, of your writing, right? So how do they help us? Tables, figures, and graphs. First of all, diagrams and illustrations of any kind help us to summarize a research finding. When do we use a diagram? When we have some amount of data and we want to transmit its findings, observations, analysis, right? Any aspect of it which we feel can be put together in the form of a table or a figure or a graph, and it would help us to demonstrate what we would otherwise have to argue through words, right? So demonstration, it helps us therefore to summarize a research finding. Next step is it helps us to elucidate results and findings. Again, rather than arguing, you are demonstrating. It helps you to break down complex information. Very important point. Any diagram or illustration is going to help you to break down complex information. Now, if I have a data where I want to speak about laser printers and their various attributes, the cost, the speed, or whatever. So if I have to compare 5 printers, for example, it would be too much for a reader to take in if the reader is just reading it in the form of a prosaic thing, a paragraph. But as soon as there is a table on the page where different kinds of printers are listed on one side and their traits or their qualities are listed on another side, the information is being broken down, the information is being eased out for them, and it becomes very convenient for the reader to collect attention, to give it some kind of attention, and also to focus on the attributes which would affect the buyer the most, the reader, the buyer the most, right? So breaking down of complex information is one of the ways in which diagrams and illustrations help you. Then is enhancing the visual impact of writing. Most of the times, research, writings are very mundane, or you just go on reading and reading paragraphs on paragraphs. It's not a children's book, which would include pictures, images, cartoons, right? So a lot of times writers include diagrams or illustrations in order to enhance the visual impact of the writing. Now, when you include, say, photographs or graphs, you also include a bit of colors. So there is a visual impact, a strong visual impact that you are giving to an otherwise black and white paper, right? So it enhances visual impact. It substantiates data and results. When you create a table, for example, you say HP printer, has this speed, or it has these other kind of qualities, it has this cost, you are substantiating your data. And then you are also substantiating your results, because you are comparing not 1 or 2, but you are comparing 4 printers, and then you are giving the results that whichever is the most cost effective and which has the most number of what should I call it? Benefits, for example, it includes 3D printing or laser printing, or it also includes a scanner. It also has a photocopier. So you are substantiating your data and results. There can be no hoodwinking there. There can be no falsifying of facts there. Your data has to be reliable. That is something that we are going to cover later in detail. But for now, when we just because this point needs to be elaborated. So diagrams and illustrations help you to substantiate data and its results. Okay. Then, of course, it brings clarity. When a complex information will be broken down, obviously it is going to bring clarity, right? Because whatever the reader was otherwise going to read in the form of words and arguments, the reader now has to just look at the diagram, focus on the facts, and those facts are obviously going to be verifiable, right? So that simplifies the whole act of reading. It also simplifies the act of writing. Though it's a different thing that one needs to practice in order to learn how to make tables, and that can be a little challenging. But once you are done with it, when you know how to create tables, the whole act of writing becomes simplified, because now you know how to use a tool in order to argue something, in order to actually substantiate something, right? Okay. Here I will cover a very important point. I'm trying to answer a dilemma that usually research scholars or people who write academic reports, who are involved in any kind of academic writing, a question that they usually face is when to use tables and figures, when to use graphs or maps, right? Because a lot of times researchers are confused when is the right time or which is the right table or figure to be incorporated in a research article. So this is a very important discussion here. Now, when we are planning when to use tables and figures, just a minute. It is important, first of all, to check the journal requirements. Whether you are writing for a journal or you are writing for any agency or organization, every such agency, organization, journal would have its own rules and regulations. A lot of journals, for example, limit the number of tables and figures that you can incorporate in a research article because it turns out to be a little more expensive publishing figures and tables, because that's all graphic, right? So that requires there can be other kind of limitations that journal goes through, which is why they are going to limit it anyway. It is important to check the journal requirements. Also, why it is important to check journal requirements is because a lot of times there is a specific font, size, figure, that the journal would advise you to affirm to. So in that case, again, when you write your research paper, when you do your academic writing, it's important to check with the journal. Or if you are just writing and thinking, oh, I can send this to any journal that I want or any agency I want, then it is better to check with them before you submit to a particular journal or agency. So you can write and plan your paper as you want, and only later while submitting, you can check with the journal and see what is required to be done. So you can customize, you can customize the tables and figures accordingly. Then second, decide whether a table or a figure is necessary. Now, a lot of times what happens is there is very little amount of data that people end up putting in a table or in the form of a graph. At that moment, it becomes very unconvincing. It becomes a burden for the publication. It becomes disruptive, because when you include tables and figures, if you have read some books, you would know that a lot of times I am sure you've read science books and a number of such books where they keep referring to diagrams or maps. So you know that you are in a way disrupting the act of reading for a reader when you place a table, when you ask the reader to go and check the table first, right? So sometimes it is not all that necessary to disrupt the reading process just because you feel like having a table for a visual impact. Table, yes, it adds visual impact, but it should justify its presence in a document. So while you are thinking, deciding whether you want to include a table or figure, what table or figure you want, first decide whether you really want it or not. Next is choose. Now, If you want a table, but you end up putting a graph, if you need a graph, but you end up putting a table, if you need a photograph, but you end up putting nothing, all that is also going to disrupt the act of reading. It is going to make the reading process very ineffective. And also, maybe it would lack some conviction, right? So it's important to choose, to decide what type of table. Now, tables are of a lot of types: figures, images, graphs are all of lot of types: bar graph, line graph, histogram. So these are of many varieties. So it's important to choose out of so many which would suit your requirement the best. There are ample amount of sources from where you can learn how to draw a table, figure, or a graph. Today, it is not so difficult. There are a lot of apps which also help you with the whole process. And it is not a shame to go out, ask for help from friends who know the process, who know the drill, or also ask for a teacher's help. For a researcher, especially researchers who are concerned with literature, for example, non-science subjects, sometimes, perfecting the art of making tables or figures can be even more challenging one, because we've discarded maths long ago, right? So it's no shame in consulting a supervisor, a teacher, a mentor, when you are grappling with the issue of what to have in the document and in what form, right? So next is learn to position tables and figures in the most strategic part of the text. Now, this point, I would come back to it in detail later on. I would not derail my discussion for now, but just keep this in mind. Position the tables and figures in the most strategic part of the text, which means, again, when we are focused on the act of reading, and we know that there is going to be a reader who will be reading this article, research paper, whatever, you have to understand that you do not only have to think whether or not you are substantiating your data, but you also have to think how effectively it would be accepted by, it would be received by the reader. So placement of this table or figure is equally important. I will come back to this point. Let's move on to the next slide. Now, this is a piece of information I found in almost every book that I read. So I thought I should incorporate this piece of information in my slide also. Again, it is about what to choose, right? And in what form should it be portrayed, depicted, the data be depicted. So this slide happens to answer that question. Now here, this is a table that I've created. It speaks about tables, which is information in a tabular format, figures, which includes graphs, any maps, all those things. Photographs also can be counted in, and then text. So when you are writing a paper, what kind of information you should communicate through text, what kind of information should be put in a figure, and what kind of information should be put in the form of a table. For those who might be panicking that I'm not speaking about what a table is or what a figure is, I'll come to it. But first, I wanted to share this slide with you. And maybe later, when we've discussed everything, we can come back to this slide to understand it in a better way, right? But let's, for a beginning also, let's also discuss how these decisions, these pertinent decisions, are to be made. Now, table, when is table used, the first point is to show many and precise numerical, the variety of values or precise numerical values and other specific data in a small space. When you have exact data, for example, the cost of a laser printer, in that case, you would use a table, right? First. But if you do not have a specific data, or you might have specific data, but you want to show some amount of trends, patterns, relationships between one thing and other, for example, relationship between say weather conditions and the amount of rainfall, or the trends, say increasing COVID cases. All right. So when you are speaking about trends, patterns, or relationships across data sets, in that case, you use figures, which includes graphs or maps or charts. And when do you use text? When you don't have extensive or complicated data to present, or when a survey is limited or completely absent. So when you don't have a survey, you don't have any field, you've not done any field work, you don't have any survey, you don't have any statistics. In that case, of course, you are not going to either use a table or a figure. You are only going to argue what you believe in, and you are going to substantiate it through some quotes from the critics, like we do in literature. When we want to substantiate something about Shakespeare, we are going to draw data from what other critics have said about him or his writings. So that is how it will be done. The second point is, table is used when you want to compare and contrast data values or characteristics among related items or items with several shared characteristics. Again, here I'm talking about printers. A good example that I would continue with. Here again, you are comparing some standard characteristics. You have some standard data values, and now you want to draw a comparison. In that case, it's always better to use a table, because the table is going to show what printers out of the list have a scanner, what printers out of the list have a photocopier, what, all details like these. Then figures are used to summarize research findings. Table is supposed to show, compare and contrast, but a graph is supposed to summarize. Suppose talking about the printers only, you want to show that how during the pandemic, during the long lockdown, the sale of printers has grown, right? So this is a research finding that it has grown, first of all. Then you want to show maybe month-wise or year-wise, something like that. You will choose a variable for yourself, and then you would put it across in the form of a graph. In that case, of course, you are going to use a figure, a graph, or a chart. Then is text. Here I'm more or less repeating myself, but I can't even see the slide because I have this. Can I minimize it? Okay, so text. If your collected data is too simplistic, now again, here comes the question that when it is simple, why would you want to put it in the form of a table or in the form of a graph? So when it is too simplistic, or when it requires just 2 columns or 2 rows, it is better to just state it in the form of words, right? Then is third point, coming back to tables. Tables are used to show the presence or absence of specific characteristics. So again, the example of printers. You must have seen a lot of times writers choose only check marks, check marks like these. You see on the left-hand side. They use only these in order to communicate what a particular laser printer has, what it lacks. So there would be a tick in some place, there won't be a tick. One laser printer has, say, a scanner, one does not have. So in that case, you are talking about presence or absence of certain characteristics. Then you use a table, right? When do you use graph or chart on the other hand? When you want to show sequence of events, procedures, developments, growth, change, stability, movement, in that case, you use a graph. Okay. And text, when you think that putting a table or figure would be completely irrelevant, either it would be too space occupying or it would not communicate much, right? So basically what is important here in this section is this part where you have details about tables and figures, right? Okay, so today we begin, now we begin with tables. First, we are going to discuss tables. And when I am discussing tables, we'll reach a point where I would ask you to just not listen, but to participate, which means that after maybe half an hour, you would need to participate, you would need to contribute. I would look forward to you contributing. So please stay with me, right? Okay, so a tabular, what is a table? A table is a tabular presentation of data. And it is like the writer says, like writer Peter Morgan here says, that this tabular presentation of data is often the heart, or better, the brain of a scientific paper. Now let's understand in common words, what is a table? Though I believe that most of you would know, if somebody has to explain what is a table, I have this one point on your screen as a hint. So how would you describe a table? If anybody can answer that. You have a hint on your screen. I don't think it should be difficult for anybody to describe a table.
Ma'am, I think table is the simplest form of graphical representation of showing some data and figures.
Yes, it is symmetrical. And what does it constitute? Like
obviously rows and columns constitute a table.
Yes, yes, good. Rows and columns, yes. Anything else? Do you think we include quantitative data in a table or qualitative data?
Ma'am, according to me, I think in table we include quantitative data.
Okay, okay, great. All right, so the first point here, as we've already discussed, I'll just read through it. Tables, what constitutes a table? What is a table? It's a symmetrical arrangement of statistical data in rows and columns filled with numbers, but also words, a lot of times words, but mostly numbers. So tables are usually used when people have to communicate specific data, but a lot of times specific data in the form of words is also communicated in the form of tables. I'll give you a number of examples for this, but let me first finish this one slide and then I'll move on to the examples. Now, what are rows in a table? Rows are lines in horizontal form. Those are rows. And what are columns? Columns are the lines that you see in the vertical arrangement. So whatever is horizontally placed in a table, in the format of a table, is a row, and whatever is vertically arranged is a column. Now, tables are used for extensive numerical data needed to be put in an organized way. But as I said earlier, also, a lot of times it might not have any numerical data, but only words. For example, the table that I just shared with you earlier, say this one. It had no numerical data, but still it helped us to understand the differences, right? So this is also a table. Coming back to this slide again. Now, tables should be self-explanatory, accurate, reliable, and conclusive. What do we mean by conclusive? Okay, let me just go one word by word here. Self-explanatory. Now, good writers and good readers will support this idea that tables need to be self-explanatory. They should be able to stand on their own, which means that a table does not need a paragraph to evaluate what it is all about. It should be able to stand on its own with just a legend or a title telling you what the table is actually exploring here or substantiating here. So that one title line, if the writer has given it in a convincing manner, it will help the reader to understand what is there in the table without any help from the writer further than that. Second, it has to be accurate. Since tables deal with specific data, it's important that that data is accurate, precise. You cannot falsify facts when you are giving facts, right? Say when it is accurate, it is going to be reliable. Now a lot of times, when you have to buy say you have to buy a new mobile phone, you have to buy a car, or you want to buy a laser printer, as we were speaking about it earlier. You do not want somebody to tell you which one to buy, but you want somebody to tell you what things you will find in each of these, so that you can make your own comparison. So in that case, when the data is accurate, the results are going to be reliable ones. And it has to be conclusive. Conclusive is same as self-explanatory. Basically, it should stand on its own. Then is table format. Now, what is a table format? We've already discussed that it is a group of rows and columns, right? But what is the format of a table? Okay, let me check if I'm missing something. I had certain points written down so that I could discuss those. I'm just checking that. Okay, so I'll now speak about the next slide. Table format. There is somebody who's on unmute. Okay. So table format. Now, what what all do we have in a table? First of all, when you incorporate a table in your research finding, the first thing is of course a table, but when you're placing it, what do you need? First thing is table number. You must have seen in a lot of research articles, when you read a table, you find a table number above it. Table 1, table 1.1, table 2.1, whatever the number is in the research article, you would see. So what you do is when you are reading a paragraph, you say, the writer says, see, check or see table number 1.2. And you move your eyes down or above that line in order to locate the table, right? So table number is consecutively placed. It has to be in a chronological order. If you have a number of tables in your research, then of course the movement has to be chronological. You cannot miss having one table. Editing has to be properly done. So table number tells the reader where to look specifically. Say your research article has 4 tables. So which table are you really speaking about? Now in a paragraph, you won't tell the title of a table. That would again disrupt the act of reading. So what do? You just refer to the number. And that too you put in brackets, because you don't want to derail or hinder the argument that you are giving. So in order to see, the sentence runs smoothly, you just mention the table number in a paragraph, in a bracket. Second is table heading. Every table must have a proper title, which in itself, in a way, tells the reader what to expect from the table. It again has to be properly written, grammatically correct, short and crisp. At the same time, it should be self-explanatory. Next is a prefatory note or head note. In every table, you would, no, not in every table, but in a lot of tables, which probably, talk about units or measurements, for example, say kg, I was giving you this example of rainfall. So if you want to read, make a statistical analysis of rainfall, say in the month of July in Delhi, you are going to read the rainfall in So those units make prefatory or head notes. Then is caption and stubs. This is very important again. Captions are column headings. Column headings, vertical lines, the headings that you place above them, those are captions. Stubs. Stubs are row headings. The headings that you give to each row is a row heading. I will just show you a table and then we will revise these points. Okay, so this is captions and tables. So what is caption? Let's repeat. Captions are column headings and stubs are row headings. Okay, and these have to be brief. These have to be crisp. They shouldn't exceed more than 3 alphabets or digits or numbers. So or words. So these have to be very properly created. Then are subheadings. Captions or stubs can have subheadings also. A lot of times you have a title for something and then you further divide it. For example, let's see if I can go towards a table here. Okay, the table is quite far away, so I'll come to that later. But let's read this first. So you have subheadings. Say I want to cover how many students visit the library, right? So I would say number of students, and in one place I would mark, say I would choose a variable, say the institutes from which they come. So this number of psychology students come to the library, or this number of management students come to the library. So this is my heading. This would number of students or field institutions will make my headings. What are subheadings? Say I want to make my analysis by reading how many boys and how many girls are coming into the library, are visiting the library. In that case, my first heading would be, my first caption would be number of students, which will further get divided into boys and girls. That is, boys and girls is a subheading. Again, subheadings have to be crisp, short, and self-explanatory. Then is main body. Main body constitutes all data that you have, numbers, characters, whatever. Then you have a footnote, very important. What is a footnote? A footnote is, whatever information you provide to the reader at the end of the table, at the bottom of the table. So footnote can include the source frame from where you got the table. It can include the survey that you conducted. So say you conducted the survey at MIT University. So it can include that information. It can include the way you collected that data. So however, whatever procedure you used in order to collect that data, footnote can also include that. Footnote also includes any abbreviations if you have used in the text. For example, for science, you say SCI. Though common abbreviations need not be explained, but there comes that moment where sometimes you're using such abbreviations which you think are not self-explanatory. In that case, you are going to put that data in a footnote, right? So those are footnotes. After that, footnotes also include sources. So whether you can see it as a separate point or you can include it in a footnote, I wanted to speak about it. So you definitely need to include a source if you are borrowing a table from some other research paper. We already understand that plagiarism is a big no in any research writing. So whenever you borrow and tables and graphs are very happily borrowed from everywhere. So there is no shame in it. It is quite creditable. It is quite all right to borrow tables or graphs. The only thing is that it is your duty, responsibility as a researcher to give the source of that table. All right. So this is the common format of a table. Now this is a table. In order to explain general things about a table, I have here included a very, very simple table. It studies the lengths of different size shoes. Okay. So here, as you see, can you see my cursor? Is my cursor visible?
Yes,
okay. So here you see this is the title of a table. All right. A title helps the reader understand what information is recorded in the table. A good title includes the names of the variables for which data is recorded, but it is not necessary that a good title should always include a variable. All right. That depends on the kind of research you are doing or kind of table that you are creating. Then there are column headings. As I told you, column headings define the vertical lines. Subheadings define the horizontal lines. So that is a difference that you should know. All right. After this, you have ordering of variables. What would be the independent variable? What would be the dependent variable? In a table, it's very easy to decide. This kind of a thing becomes a challenge when you are creating a graph. So we will discuss this detail later. All right. Another important thing which I found here, unit of measurement. This is your, in a way, head note. Now, a lot of writers, when they would make this kind of a table, had it been a comprehensive table, they would have created a separate row, and there they would have written cm, centimeters, right? Separate. So that becomes a head note. But here the head note has been incorporated along with the caption. All right. So this is the format of a table. Here now, why I included, though it is saying the same things, why I included this table was because this is a little more complex. So I thought it's important to understand the components of a complex table also. So here, they have given you the table number properly. Then there's a table title. Then you have a subheadings, row headings, then table spanner. You look at the way the table has been divided, how they are totaling the score. Of course, this is no place where we can learn how to draw a table, but what I am drawing your attention to is the fact that how aesthetically tables have to be created and what is their analytical importance, their substantial importance in a research paper. Okay. So what are cells? A good way to practice tables is using MS Word. I think that is the that is the easiest place where you can learn to make a table. A few tables that I created to explain my point were these. Let me go to those first, and then we can come back to the guidelines. This is a simple table. Here we are studying the faculty-wise library users at AM University, just a random university. So you see, this table was created on MS Word with automatic table. You know, you have this insert table and you can just select the number of rows and columns that you need. That is the easiest way of making a table. You simply keep on merging lines that you want. For example, I created this table. So this horizontal line that you see, it was divided. I simply merged the cells. I think this is very simple information I am giving you here, but it is important to understand that tables are not all that challenging to create. If you get into the practice of doing it, you would perfect it as well. Then is two-way tables. Now, what are two-way tables here? You can see this simple table. Can you see the simple table divided in two parts? Faculty, which means institutes, and then number of users, which means students who use the library. Now here I have complicated this information a little further, like the example I gave you earlier. I have here now, I'm studying the number of boys and number of girls who are frequent visitors at the library, right? Then this was a two-way table because we've added two variables, and then there is a three-way table. In a three-way table, this information gets further complicated because now we are not only using a variable where we are, variable of boys and girls, but we are also checking how many, we are also exploring how many BA students from boys from BA program visit the library, how many boys from MA program visit the library, how many girls from BA program visit the library, and how many girls from MA program visit the library. And then you total the amount 1 plus 2. So this is a little three-way tables, means you are using three variables. You are using total number of students, then their gender, and then their program. Right? So this, and then tables can, there is something called manifold table. As many as variables you would keep adding to a table, the more complicated it will keep on getting, more information it would incorporate. Now, when you create a table, it is also very important for you to decide who is your target audience. This is something that you must have learned right at the beginning of this session, of this workshop. It's always very important to consider the fact that your audience could be advanced research scholars, it could be advanced teachers, or it could be beginners. So you have to create a table according to your target audience, your target readers, right? So you would increase variables only when you feel that you are targeting a highly intellectual and expert section of the intellectual society, right? So these are three-way tables. Let me come back to the guidelines because that was important part. Now, the first guideline is consistency. Now, what do we mean by consistency? Consistency is quite an extensive topic when we speak about tables. Consistency means how you are placing the table. What consistency do you reach? Where do you place your table inside a text? What markers do you give to the reader that you can say see table 1.1, check table 1.1. So what is the consistency level that you're maintaining there? Consistency in headings, titles, consistency in the formatting of the table. In one place you are using uppercase, in the next place you are using a smaller case. That would again become a problem as far as aesthetics of a research are concerned, or the or organization of a research work are concerned. When you do not keep up with the consistency, when you do not maintain the consistency of a table of in any research, you are in a way also making yourself questioned as far as your level of discipline and organization is concerned. So consistency is very important. Next is tables need to be properly numbered. You cannot miss any number. You cannot skip the numbers. For example, you have a table called 1.1 and then you straight away go to 1.4 or 1.3. So proper editing of the entire paper is very important. Now, sitting there as a student, you might probably feel that I am covering all self-evident points, but a lot of times when we are writing research papers, our supervisors often tell us that this is wrong or this is, and then that is the moment where we realize, oh, this is something that we did not pay much attention to. You know, we thought there are a lot of things that we take for granted when we are writing research papers. Now, I, as a teacher, have to read and check a lot of NTCC projects, for example. Now, the biggest problem that I've found in a lot of NTCC projects is wrong way in which students end up writing their titles. So now everybody knows how a title has to be written, and yet this is the commonest mistake, right? So what I'm telling you is things which often sound obvious to us are not all that obvious. So it's very important to keep revising, to keep editing, and to be, a little receptive. So a lot of times we write something and we feel nothing can go wrong here, but it's important to be a little receptive there. Okay. Next is refer to the table in the text where relevant. Never repeat in text what has been presented graphically. Now, this is very important point. A lot of times, a writing problem, a writing challenge that researchers might face is that they make a diagram, they make a table, and then they start explaining it as well. Now, when you have already decided to include a table in your research, you also have to understand that now you need not include every detail in form of words. You do not have to argue for your point. You've already made your point. Now, what do? You only share the results. And then you, in brackets, tell the reader, see figure or see table 1.2. That is all that you do, right? So it is not really a wise thing to repeat what you have already created in a table. I told you that I'm going to share a few exercises with you where this point will come out clearly. So just wait for that. So placing the text, this is still something that we are to discuss with the help of examples. Then write clear, informative, and crisp titles for your tables and figures, and label column heads, axis labels, figure labels. Axis labels are actually done in a graph, so let's leave it for now. But in a table, you have to properly label the column heads and the stubs, the captions, the head notes, everything has to be properly labeled. All right, even in a lot of graphs that I was checking on the internet, for example, were poorly made. For example, a lot of graphs do not include either they do not include either whether the measurement unit is in kg or mm or whatever. So that again makes reading challenging and unconvincing, and it also does not give out any proper results, right? Then is borrowed research must be cited. I've already stated that tables have to be well structured, clear, accurate, and reliable, already done. Place the table in the text where it can be properly referred to, but does not interrupt the flow of the text. Then, yes, this is also a very important point. A lot of times researchers, or maybe this could be a guideline sent by a publication, where publication would not like the researcher to include graphs and tables within the text. So they ask the writer to leave that part to be put in the appendices section, right? So a lot of times that also happens. In that case, what do you write in the paragraph, in the brackets, when you are directing the reader to go and check the map or the table? You simply say, check, like I've given an example here as well, see appendix 2, right? So you are directing the reader to wherever the reader can find that map, that table, but you are not disrupting the process of reading. So now it is the reader's choice completely whether the reader wants to stop and first look at the table, or whether the reader wants to continue reading the table and probably come back to the graph and its analysis later, right? So these are general guidelines, general principles that you are supposed to follow when including a table in your research paper or in any academic piece that you are writing. Okay, so this is already done. Let me skip this. Now, while I was making this PPT, an important question that came to my mind was this. Since I know that a lot of students in this who are participants are from the field of literature, I thought of including this part where I try to answer this question: do scholars of literature also need to include tables and figures? Now, would anybody like to answer this? Do you think scholars of literature, people who are reading any kind of language or literature, it could be Hindi, Sanskrit, English, do you think we need to include graphs and tables or charts in our projects? Can anybody answer that?
Yes, ma'am. As I am a scholar of literature, I can certainly say we can always take the help of tables and figures while writing an academic piece. For example, I will give you an example of if I am writing an article on romantic literature, right? So with the help of table, I can identify some romantic writers, and in rows I can tell about the romantic element that are found in their poetries.
Okay, that's
So yeah, so with the help of table, I don't have to write a lengthy paragraph to make the readers understand about the romantic elements in various poets. So through tables it would be quite easy.
yes, yes, absolutely right. Anybody else who would like to answer that question? Now, literature students generally assume or presume, I should say, that they do not need tables or figures in their research project. However, I would insist that literature students today, literature has become a very diverse and inclusive field of scholarship. And it is joining, there are blending lines between literature and sociology, literature and law, or political administration, archaeology, environment, zoology, psychology, physics, chemistry. So today, literature students are not only working on novels that were written 100 years ago, but they are also working on aspects like socio-political aspects, geopolitical aspects, socio-economic aspects, or socio-political topics also. There are a lot of scholars of literature who are studying all these areas, in which case either they would at some point of time have to read a table or a graph, or they would have to include it. They would have to create one as part of their research. Now, I'll give you an example, a very simple one. Suppose someone is studying the mushrooming of slums or refugee camps in, say, Bengal or in Palestine. They might feel like including a statistical record of how of these refugee camps, right? Of how they have mushroomed in the last 50 years, for example. Or they can also add various variables to this study. For example, number of men, number of women, number of children in these refugee camps, or the prevalent pervasive age groups of each, or whether or how many men are employed and how many women are employed, or how many men and women are unemployed, or how many men and women are politically involved or are apolitical. In this case, you need to have a table. You will have to create a table. So literature scholars might not realize that a lot of times such statistical analysis adds a huge credibility to their research work, making it more accurate and reliable and creditable, right? And so it's important for their literature students also to learn the significance of these, and also learn how to create tables and figures, right? So this is an aspect that I wanted to cover. In my next slide now, I'm answering a important question that we are always talking about. We are insinuating but not really discussing in detail, and that is placing the table. How to place a table. I have taken out this piece of map that you see, the table here, from a book published by Sochberg and Cynthia, very important feminist writers The name of the book is Gender, War and Militarism. I am going to, I'll see if I can also share the PDF with you here, because this is a very important one. Let me see. Can you see the PDF here, Measuring Gender Inequalities and Identities? Okay, you do see a table here, right? The slide. Okay, here I'll do one. Okay, now I believe you will be able to see the PDF also. Can you see it? Please answer.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so here you see a research paper. This is actually a book, published book. It had a lot of figures, tables, so I thought of showing it to you. I wanted to basically show you how to place a table in a research work. So this is a very good example of checking how to incorporate tables in your research work. So this is basically a chapter on sexual violence in conflict situations. So what the researchers are doing, they are studying various countries and how, what are the levels of sexual violence, what are the reasons for sexual violence, what is the economic condition of the people who are living in these areas. This is that kind of a study. Here you see, I'll just read this paragraph. Figure 11.1 shows that there is significant variation in gender inequality in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Rwanda, and Sierra Leone. In all cases, women's formal political equality was diminished by low representation in government. Although this may seem like evidence of exceptional inequality, in actuality, women in most countries suffer unequal political outcome, despite enjoying formal political equality. Now you see here that the writers have disrupted the reading process by placing the table just in the middle of the paragraph. Why? Because probably they must have felt that sharing political participation, you know, this whole statistical record on political participation is very important. Majority of the expert writers do this. They are going to, you see, you must have seen, you know, when you read novels or if you read books also, which especially incorporate pictures, images, photographs, or such tables, you would have to skip tables, complete the paragraph, and then go back to the table. This is one way of doing things. This can be done for a number of reasons. Again, as I said, the table, the author deemed it important to share the table first. Here in this table, she is analyzing the limited political participation of women and equality, their equality rights in 4 countries, and then she's in 3 countries, and then she's comparing it with the global average. Then here, what the reader would do, the reader would first complete the sentence and then go back to the figure. In the next, however, she does not disrupt the paragraph. She says what she wanted to say. She speaks about figure 11.1. You can see it here. I've underlined it. Then she speaks about figure 11.3. Whatever analysis she's made, whatever results she has, she shares those. And then she leaves it for the reader to check the table. So this is 11.2, and just after it is 11.3. Also see how these graphs are, these are actually graphs here now. So how these graphs are closely placed together. There is a reason why these graphs are closely placed together. Basically, what is the writer trying to do here? In 11.2, she is showing the economic position of both men and women in 4 countries, in 3 countries, and then she's comparing it with global average. So in 11.2, you have economic position. In 11.3, she is further arguing that economic inequality happens even when women are educated. Okay. So that is how, you know, she places these 2 tables, because she wants the reader to come out to compare these 2 graphs, to draw conclusions, to classify and categorize this information that the reader has received, and see the differences, or you know, whatever conclusions she wants the reader to draw. So she's trying to facilitate that process of drawing conclusions, which is why the graphs are placed together. Right? So Now, let's see the language that the author uses. The author simply says men were much more active economically than women in Sierra Leone and in Bosnia, whereas economic activity rates were nearly equal in Rwanda. She stated, given her conclusion, and then she has merely written C figure 11.2. She does not substantiate her argue in support of her data. She does not give the details that this was the percentage or this was the finding. She simply states what is more and what is less. The rates she's comparing, and then she's sharing that conclusion. Right? So this is a PDF that I wanted to share so that you could see for yourself how authors usually place data in their research. Coming back to the PPT. Okay, so placing the data, you can yourself see. Okay, another thing that I wanted you to see here is this figure, political participation and equality. Then there's a table, and here you see the rest of the details, the list of abbreviations, list of important components which have been used in the table, but which the authors felt would not be readily understood by the reader. For example, what is CEDAW? So they are explaining the acronyms here. And then there is compiled from, the source has been given. So this particular table has been borrowed from a UNESCO report. So they have given the source, right? So this is how placing the table is done. Now, I believe we are done with discussing what are tables. Now we can move towards activities. There are 3 or 4 activities I have here for you. We have good half an hour to go, which I believe should be enough for us to indulge ourselves in doing some problem solving here. Now, this is a table that you see in front of you. A simple question that I'm going to ask you here is, what is the table trying to communicate? A very simple question.
Ma'am, they are simply trying to through this table, they are simply trying to tell us about the number of students studying in various schools under the government of India.
Yes, government
as well as private,
as
well as private only schools also.
Right, right. And
in fact, they are trying to they are just trying to they are just trying to understand the number of literate students, if we call it in a simple way.
Okay. Nihal, I want you to look at the table once more and tell me, are they checking the literacy level? Just look at the table once more and look at, I want you to give me the exact variable that they have speaking about here.
No, ma'am. In fact, I was wrong. They are just trying to tell us the growing number of students in various years.
Yes.
In different schools.
Exactly. Exactly. So what they are trying to do here is they are giving you an year-wise percentage of attendance. So you have now here, what do you have? Please focus. A year interval. In year interval, as you would know, I think many of you who are very good at maths and statistics would already know that you need to have a proper interval. For example, whether either you study in a such a tabular form or a graph, you will study decade. You will intervals would be in the form of decade or millenniums or whatever you choose to, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. There has to be but a standard unit or that you have to decide upon. So here it is. I think this is the interval of 5 years: 2000, 2005, 2010, and 2015, and they are studying the year-wise percentage of attendance. So can somebody now tell me, what do you conclude from this table? If I ask you to study the table, what would your conclusion be? The conclusion need not be in one sentence, so you are free to speak.
In simple way, we can say they are just trying to tell us, this table is just trying to tell us that governments as well as private players are doing a good job in spreading education.
Very good. Very good, Nihal, and I'm quite impressed with the conclusion that you've drawn. So you see that the table, since it is showing a continuous progress, despite the numbers being low in certain areas, for example, government schools in villages, despite that, there is a considerable increase in the year-wise percentage of attendance, which helps us to conclude or to deduce that efforts, governments or private efforts towards imparting education are increasing. Yeah, so it has encouraged students to attend school as well. Very good. Let's move on to the next activity now. So here it's a very simple exercise, something that we are now fond of doing since we are doing quizzes and everything these days. So a very simple question. This is based on whatever discussions we've had so far. I will ask you a question. You have to answer choose the right option below. So the question is, dash explains the specific features of the table which are not self-explanatory. Which out of these explains the specific features of the table which are not self-explanatory? Options: footnote, source note, body of the table, or caption. Caption that we give to the columns.
Ma'am, caption.
Read the question again. See, some content in the table which is not self-explanatory, and therefore it needs to be specified, clarified. What is that?
Ma'am, footnote.
Sorry, Khushbu?
Ma'am, footnote.
Footnote, very good. You remember I told you footnote includes all the details which otherwise you cannot fit into the table. Apart from that, for example, what do the acronyms stand for? What are the abbreviations stand for? Everything will be put in the footnote. All right, so that's a footnote. Good. Next question. A table is a piece of authentic information and does not need a source or parenthetical reference or any citation. True or false?
Ma'am, false.
Yes, false.
You do have to mention source also.
Sorry, repeat.
Ma'am, I think it's the answer is false because we need to also mention the source also.
Yes, so it's true, Nihal. It's true. A table is a piece of authentic information and does not need a source. Oh, yes, it's false. Sorry. Yes, you are right. It's false because it does need a source. Right. Sorry.
Yes, that's what I was saying.
Yes. Okay, so you are right. Now the next part of the question is, dash is part of a table that gives information about the unit used in the table to represent data. Measurement of the unit. In what part of the table do you put the measurement data? Stub, caption, head note, title. Unit of measurement.
Ma'am, stub.
Stub is row headings. I'll repeat this because this gets a little challenging to understand like this, but when you sit down and you maybe look back at this content, you will be able to learn it. Stub is row heading. Caption is column heading. Column heading, caption. Row heading, stub. And measurement is put under head note, or this is also called prefatory note. So that the correct answer here is head note. Okay. So remember stub. What is stub?
Ma'am, but in one of the slides in the stub portion, you said we can also write measurements like kg, grams, etc. That's why I answered stub.
Yes, Nihal, let me answer that. See, if you are given a number of options, then you have to choose the best answer. So the best answer here is head note. But there are certain research papers or there are certain kind of tables where writers would not choose to make a separate column and use a head note, and so they would incorporate the head note in the caption space only. But in majority of the tables, you would find a separate column separate row given to a head note. Okay. All right. Now let's come to the next activity, and I'm looking forward to larger participation here. I give you 7 minutes to read this paragraph. This paragraph explains a table. Okay, this is a table, and this paragraph explains that table. What you have to do is you have to tell me the variables here. What are the variables in this table? Which means what figures do you think through this analysis the writer is speaking about? What variables that can be put in columns and what can be put in rows? So that's what you have to tell me. You can take time, sit back, read the paragraph here, and then answer. Basically, what you have to do through this exercises, you have to just tell me, last time, like in this activity, you told me what the table is studying. This was in the form of a table, and you concluded what the table is trying to study. Now you have to tell me the same thing, the conclusion that you reach, the idea that you get when you read this paragraph about what the author has studied. So you have to just tell me what the author is studying here. So it's a very simple, the answer is very simple. You don't have to build a whole discourse over it. Just tell me what the author is trying to study.
Estimated population growth of 75 plus people in UK.
Yes. So basically, the author is trying to study population growth above the age of, over and above the age of 75. That's all that the author is trying to study. So you see, there are two kinds of figures here, two numerical data here. One is in the form of years, and the other is in the form of population. Million, 10 million, 64.8 million, 73.2 million. This is the number of people. And then you have years, 20 years from 2015, and then 2035, and then 2050 and 2070. So the answer was right there. The author is trying to study two things: population growth above 75 age, two variables there, and then year, right? So what I'm trying to tell you through these exercises is that once you put your mind into it, it is not very difficult. I was while I was exploring this whole table and charts thing, I learned that now this was something I had not known earlier, that students are, and I believe that most of you must have come out of those places. Students are taught how to write a table, how to describe a table, and how to describe a graph in their +1 and +2, right? And this is also a part of IELTS exam, where you get a pie chart and you have to write it in a paragraph what the pie chart stands for, what are the how you describe it, how you portray data in verbal manner, what you see in visual form, right? So these are important things, these are important observations. Why is it important for us to focus on these? This is because as research scholars, a lot of times we miss important analysis, we miss important things to notice just because we did not ever push ourselves to learn those things. So it's important to put your heart into these forms of readings also, because the first question that I asked you, if you remember, whether we see them or read them, a lot of us just look at the tables and we skip them because we do not want to understand them, or we do not know how to understand them, right? So it's important to learn to read tables, rows, tables, graphs, and any sort of maps, because those have important things to say. The writer is only sharing the conclusions with us and not the other details. Those details are there in the table and the graph, and it's important for us to look at them, right? Let me move on to the last activity. We have last 20 minutes to go, actually more, but last 10 minutes, I think we should keep for questions if there are any. So we've somewhere around 15 to 20 minutes to go. I want you to create a table with this information. Every student might end up creating a different kind of table. Your columns could be different, your rows could be different, but for one, just try to create a table from this information. According to a survey conducted in a particular department at a university, data of 120 graduates, that is 30 students in section A and 30 students in section B, was collected. because there are just two sections, section A, section B, 30 plus 30. Remember, this is going to be a very simple graph. There is no complex detail here. But there is another variable that we are going to add, and the variable is that when asked what did they plan to do after graduation, in section A, 15 students wanted to go for further study, 10 wanted to join family business, 14 wanted to start their own business, and 21 wanted to join a corporate job. On the other hand, now there are two kinds of study, section A, section B. In section B, 18 students wanted to go for further study, 9 wanted to join family business, 16 wanted to start their own business, and 17 wanted to join a corporate job. Now you have to create a table with this information. Now, if you are good at it, you can add further variables, like you can add percentage of students who wanted to go for further studies. That's completely your wish. But I am asking you to create a very simple table here. Okay, I just noticed there's a little mistake here. So according to a survey conducted in a department, that of 120 graduates, 60 students in section A and 60 students in section B. There's a little gap there. So please, if you are maybe confused, so that's a correction. Are we done with the table? Should we discuss?
Nivedita, just a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
This is data of 120 graduates, and yet it says 30 students in section A and 30 in section B.
That's what I corrected. I just told the students, so there's a little mistake. It would be 60-60. I just corrected that.
Oh, okay. I had a power failure. It got disconnected. I just connected back after about 10 minutes. All right. Oh.
Okay, so we have last 10 minutes left now. If you have created a table, could you please tell me what figures have you chosen? I mean, what do you keep in columns? What do you keep in rows? How have you bifurcated the whole detail in columns and rows? Could you please answer that? Or would you like to mail me the answer that the table that you've created? If you want to mail it to me, even that choice is open to you, but you need to answer at least. All right, so I will just post my email ID in the group. Those who have created the tables can mail the table to me on this address. Okay, so I hope my email address is visible to everybody. You can mail your answers here. Now, when you put this kind of data in rows and columns, a lot of times, you might have different ways to do it. Some students would put one thing in the form of columns and other in rows, and some would do just the opposite. So it's completely your choice, but how the table looks aesthetically to you at the end, that is going to make you revise the table if suppose it has not been properly done. So even that is a way of understanding whether you have created an impactful table or not. When at the end you are not convinced with what you've created, you can obviously go back and change what you've put in columns and what you've put in rows. So that is why I gave you a lot of time to make those revisions in case you were not able to formulate what should go where. So again, you can take further time to do it. I've corrected the slide also so that you can take a picture and work upon it for, whenever you have time. So do try creating a table. This is a very simple thing, a daily activity that we people do in our everyday lives. Maybe you should try doing all these things because this will help you to know the importance of, the whole process of reading and evaluating and then creating your own tables. Are there any questions? Okay, so tomorrow we are going to discuss figures. Figures again includes a number of areas, for example, illustrations, photographs, drawings, flowcharts, graphs. Today we discuss just tables, and majority of how you place graphs and figures or tables, most of the things, the guidelines to consider, those have already been discussed. So I think we can be very quick with the rest of the things. We would not take much time discussing what needs to be placed where. It would be an easier thoroughfare tomorrow. So see you all for tomorrow's session. Thank you, everybody.